Hello muckers, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So it is currently 4:10 a.m. and I have a fixation right now on Gypsy Rose. Now, the reason for this is she is supposedly being released in a month's time, actually today, from the time I'm filming this, which is December 28th, 2023. Now, Gypsy Rose, if she gets, released in that time, it means that she's getting released early, 3 years. She was supposed to be getting released in 2026. I know that she's 32 right now, and if she gets released this time next month, she will have served 7 years. And if people don't know about Gypsy Rose, I have watched a few documentaries a few years ago, but I've been kind of diving into the world again, and I really want to watch this documentary. I was speaking to my friend about it, and my friend was like, oh my god, I watched this documentary, you need to watch it. It's like 20 minutes on the A&E channel. I will link it down below. And I was like, this is exactly what I want to do on my channel right now, where if you're wanting to be with me and spend some time right now and we can dive into this together, here we go. By the way, Gypsy is supposed to be released December 28th. Now, this is what I want to watch, which is kind of detailing the overall timeline. Now, I am forever Team Gypsy Rose, by the way. I will never condone, ever condone what happened to her mother. Anyone doing that to her mother, right? Her mother was killed by Gypsy's boyfriend. Now, but the thing is, if Gypsy Rose's mother had continued to do what she was going to do, it would have been Gypsy that would have died. It would have been Gypsy Rose that would have died. She would have literally been poisoned to death by her mother. So the boyfriend did what he did, and obviously Gypsy was involved in that, but Gypsy was also being killed by her mother. And the amount of suppression that Gypsy Rose's mother did to Gypsy Rose in her fundamental mental years, I don't even know the impact that can have on someone. And so I will forever be Team Gypsy Rose, just because I cannot even begin to fathom the amount of abuse and manipulation that she was put through. And I think that her mother was an evil, disturbed woman. And I have so much sympathy for Gypsy Rose. And I know a lot of people have been talking about her because of this impending release from jail. And it's kind of become like a meme online. People are like, I'm going to be waiting at the prison with my arms wide open. Gypsy, welcome back to society. Like this kind of thing. So I think her boyfriend has lifetime in prison, but she obviously is getting 7 years. I'm excited for Gypsy Rose to live a life where she's not being force-fed medication or force-fed lies about herself or forced to be sick. I think it's going to be a very interesting transitional period when she gets out into the real world that is in prison. But I wanted to watch this video and kind of go through some things. I really do have a fixation on it right now, so please just allow me to have this. And if you have any thoughts down below, we can get into it. I'm re-diving into the topic again, so my opinions will grow tremendously as the days goes on whenever I dive more and more into this. And if people are interested, trust me, I will dive more into this. But I thought as a nice little starter, let's start on this. So this will be linked down below. I'm going to watch this for fair use commentary purposes.
On Prime Crime, the dark truth.
Prime Crime. Fun little catchy name.
Behind an adored family.
This woman suffered this abuse, all the medications, feeding tubes.
A shocking crime that changed everything.
Her lungs would have literally been floating in blood.
And the twisted mind of a killer.
He wanted you to help clean up blood, right?
Yes, sir.
And he wanted you to clean names.
Yes, sir.
Hey there, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and welcome to Prime Crime. This is where we do a deeper dive into the most high-profile and memorable true crime cases. Our next story is about a mother and daughter, but it's a relationship.
I think there's something interesting about the way sorry, before I get into this, I told you I'm going to have so many opinions as we go through this. I think there's something interesting about the extremities of the boyfriend kind of taking over and killing, was it Dee Dee, I think the mom was called? Rather than reporting or rather than doing something less extreme, right? And I'm just glad that Gypsy Rose didn't get the lifetime sentence, because This may be an unpopular opinion, but I don't believe that Gypsy Rose would have deserved a lifetime sentence for her involvement in what happened to her mother. I think it was the boyfriend that took over, and I think the boyfriend was waiting for a moment like that to do to anybody, right? And obviously Gypsy Rose was involved in this, but I think the boyfriend was the one really, really, really orchestrating it. And I think that it would have been incredibly inhumane for Gypsy Rose to have had to have gone through what she went through at the hands of her mother and then be forced to have lifetime in prison. That may be an unpopular opinion, but I kind of stand by it.
Straight out of a horror movie. This is Claudine, Dee Dee Blanchard, and Gypsy Blanchard. At first glance, they look like a loving mother and daughter. Those who knew them would say Dee Dee relentlessly took care of her young girl, who ever since the age of 8 was suffering from numerous ailments like leukemia and muscular dystrophy. The only problem? It was all a lie.
This woman, Dee Dee Blanchard, held the ultimate control over Gypsy.
Gypsy was in fact a healthy girl. Evidence would reveal that Dee Dee deliberately fabricated her daughter's medical conditions. She forced Gypsy to be confined to a wheelchair, shaved her head, and sometimes had her take medications that would mimic symptoms of real diseases.
All of the years that Gypsy had suffered through with...
You know what I mean? I believe that the mother was eventually going to kill Gypsy Rose. From where it was going, that's where I think the story was going as well. That's why I deem it would have been unfair for Gypsy Rose to have gotten lifetime in prison for this. You know, she has served 7 years now for her involvement in this. But her mother was also killing her. Like, her mother was literally killing her from the second that she was a baby. And I don't necessarily know if Gypsy Rose can be held to much of a high standard in her participation in what happened to her mother. Maybe an unpopular opinion, considering what is your fundamental mental development when you are being force-fed medication that does not apply to things you have, or, you know, restricted, or like all these, like, you know what I mean? Like her, what, you can't understand what someone's mental state is like when they have years and years and years of basically abusing medication that does not apply to them, that applies to serious illnesses. Like, what the fuck?
Surgeries that were unnecessary, procedures, this perceived...
Surgeries and procedures Gypsy Rose went through for things she didn't have. Because her mother...
facade that she had to carry on with.
While it's not clear what led Dee Dee to do this, her own mother was apparently overbearing as well. Family members have indicated a strained relationship between the two, with some suggesting, at the end, Dee Dee may have starved her mother to death. Whatever may be the case, health professionals believe Dee Dee may have been showing signs of a mental illness called Munchausen syndrome by proxy.
A caregiver is intentionally feigning or actually committing some kind of medical or psychological problem on the person that they are supposed to be caring for. They do this because they...
Looking at these photos of them is so disturbing, isn't it? It really is. It's like those things online. I mean, they said it earlier where it's like, on first glance, what a sweet photo. And then you start to look at it for long, and then you're like, oh, that woman was poisoning her daughter. That woman was, you know, like... It really is. Oh my God.
Appreciate the attention that they get from having someone in their life that needs significant medical or psychological help.
Dee Dee was able to con the public by receiving donations, having the Make-A-Wish Foundation pay for a trip to Disney World, and even allowing Habitat for Humanity to build the two a house in Springfield, Missouri. Despite signs that this was a farce, Dee Dee continually misled doctors and caseworkers.
This is a failure of the healthcare system.
That's also something that's really bizarre to me. It's like, how does someone lie that their daughter has these illnesses that require surgery, right? But how did the surgeries get signed off for? How does the medication get signed off for? That's like me having a child and going in and being like, my child, and I've looked up the symptoms of an illness, and I'm like, they have this. Before they would want to do surgery or medication, surely they would want to like check like temperatures. Obviously, Gypsy Rose was being force-fed lies and was probably saying what her mother wanted her to, so I can't blame her for that. But it's like, with the healthcare professionals, I mean, signing off on surgeries and stuff is intense. Like, how persuasive was Dee Dee? How... I don't know. I really don't know how this happens. And I don't know how it happens for so long, by the way. And I don't know how Make-A-Wish can be involved. Donations are involved. Houses are being built for her. Like, and I know Munchausen from The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Does anyone know The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills? There was a season of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills where Lisa Rinna was accusing Yolanda Hadid of having Munchausen because she had... What did Yolanda Hadid have? It wasn't lupus. What did or does Yolanda Hadid eat in a day? Fucking almonds. Lyme disease. So Lisa Rinna accused Yolanda Hadid of having Munchausen and not actually having it, and it was an entire season about this. That's how I know the word Munchausen. See, watching reality shows sometimes helps. Sometimes. Not a lot.
How can a person who is not ill see so many neurologists, oncologists, and other doctors and not be treated?
For the majority of her life, Gypsy didn't know the truth. In fact, her mother convinced her she was younger than she was, going so far as to change the dates on her daughter's birth certificate. But by 19, Gypsy was beginning to peel back the layers and started to act out.
But think as well, so that's Gigi Hadid. Gypsy Rose was starting to, obviously they're saying like peel back the truth and stuff, but she would have still been on heavy medication that she didn't need during this time. So I find it very hard to fault her for things that she did or whatever when she's, finding out the truth because she's a lot older now, but she's still under a lot of medication and still receiving surgeries that she doesn't need. Like,
she tried to rebel. She still tried to engage in teenager kinds of behaviors because she wanted to feel safe and feel free and feel normal.
In 2012, the story takes a turn. Gypsy meets a young man from Big Bend, Wisconsin named Nicholas Godejohn on a dating website called ChristianDatingForFree.com and forms a relationship with
not Christian dating online.
them. Although they became girlfriend and boyfriend pretty quickly, it would be years before they actually met in person. In 2015, they consummated their love by having sex in a movie theater bathroom behind Dee Dee's back. Dee Dee wasn't happy with the relationship.
It didn't go well at all. My mother hated him from the moment they met.
3 months later, Dee Dee Blanchard would be dead. On June 14th, 2015, law enforcement entered the Blanchard home and found her massacred corpse. A later autopsy revealing she had been stabbed 17 times.
What makes this all the more horrific is not just the injury of the knife being plunged through her back, but also penetrating the lungs, and she is essentially suffocating to death on her own blood.
Initially, Gypsy is nowhere to be found. But then, a clue. Someone using Dee Dee's Facebook account posts graphic and disturbing messages. Investigators track the IP address to Nicholas Godejohn. Once Wisconsin authorities burst into his home, they find Gypsy alive and well. In a surprising twist, Nicholas decides to tell police what happened.
Okay, I'll admit it. I did actually stab her.
Do you know how many times you stabbed her?
4.
But did Nicholas act alone? Coming up, the story takes a turn again.
Did Gypsy know that you were going to kill her mother?
So, if I'm remembering correctly, Gypsy was involved in the organizing of it. And I'm even pretty sure that in court, they were like, did you buy the knife? And she was like, no, I stole it. Like, Gypsy was very upfront about everything. feel that the boyfriend was waiting to commit such a crime to anybody. Like, who's to say that he wasn't going to have done that to Gypsy first? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like the boyfriend was waiting to do that kind of thing. And Gypsy, probably very much so still on medication that doesn't apply to things she has. I can't even imagine what was going through in her mind and her brain. And also realizing that her mother was poisoning her and all these different things. Like, you can't make rational decisions or conversations or whatever. So I feel that the boyfriend also abused that. And it's also important to note that with the way things were going, I do genuinely believe that Dee Dee would have killed Gypsy Rose. Like, that is just a personal opinion, but how much medication can you force someone to take, or what happens when Gypsy Rose starts to reveal that she can walk? She doesn't need this medication. She doesn't need this surgery. You've been living a lie. You're a fraud. You need to go to prison. Like, it was one of two things. Like, in my opinion, what was going to happen was Gypsy Rose was going to be killed by her mother, or Dee Dee had to go to prison for lifetime fraud. Like, I feel that the boyfriend was waiting for someone to do this to, and he's completely at fault. And I struggle to put blame on Gypsy Rose. I really do. I don't know if that's really unpopular, but I struggle to put blame on her. I put the blame completely on the boyfriend. Well, obviously the court system did, because he got lifetime and Gypsy Rose, got 7 years.
You just had your 4? Yeah, 4 times. Okay. The fourth one, I felt it go into, I think it might have been her lungs.
It's June 2015, and a young man named Nicholas Godejohn is telling a Missouri detective that he murdered Dee Dee Blanchard, the mother of his girlfriend Gypsy. Dee Dee had abused Gypsy for years, namely convincing her daughter she was sick and confining her to a wheelchair-bound, infirm life. Did Nicholas then decide to take matters into his own hands and kill Dee Dee? As we're all about to find out, not exactly.
Did Gypsy know that you were going to kill her mother?
Honestly, she asked me to.
Okay. Why did she ask you to do that?
Because she felt it was her only way to be with me.
Investigators pieced together a fuller picture of the murder. Gypsy wanted her mother dead.
She wants to break free and understands that the only way that she can break free is by her mother no longer being in the picture. So because he sees this person that he loves being abused, and
like, you know what I mean? Like, how extreme is that? And that is a extreme cry for help. Gypsy Rose is literally saying that she doesn't feel that she can exist anymore if her mother is existing. And unfortunately, that was kind of the truth. I mean, for as long as Gypsy lived, Dee Dee needed to keep up this act, which meant that for the rest of Gypsy's life, she had to be sick. She had to, like, I can't even imagine the thought process or what, like, fuck me. It's one of the most complex stories I've ever heard in my entire life.
being
rabbit hole,
he's willing to then engage in any kind of behavior that would succeed in that goal of the two of them being together.
Nicholas explains that Gypsy led him into the house, gave him the knife, and stood back as he proceeded to stab Dee Dee to death in the middle of the night.
Can you tell me how she said it?
She pretty much yelped it.
Yelped it?
She's like,
Gypsy! Okay.
Yeah, she was loud.
And what did you do when she did that?
I didn't stop her from keep on going.
Okay. You just kept stabbing her?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's something else to know about Nicholas. He was diagnosed with autism.
One of the hallmarks is this inability to have reciprocal social interactions, meaning everything seems to be kind of just one-sided for him.
He seemed like a very reasonable, genuinely nice young man during my interactions with him. Now his interactions were a little bit odd and stiff initially, particularly, which is very common with the autism spectrum. And Nicholas was very mild in that spectrum.
He also has an extremely low IQ.
He doesn't understand complicated and complex concepts. So just immediately being asked whether or not he did it, yeah, he would immediately confess to the crime. He has no reason not to.
I think Nicholas's confession was done intelligently and voluntarily. There is no evidence of any coercion. Just because he has a certain level of diminished capacity doesn't mean that he is not capable of providing a confession that will stand up in a court of law.
This begs the question, was he manipulating Gypsy?
Does she have the ability to kind of conceptualize in that moment what she has entered into? It's almost like she's entered into a deal with another devil.
Or was she manipulating him?
It's easy to see how someone could influence him into engaging in some kind of problematic behavior.
I really think she did somewhat set him up in that regard, to where he believed the only way they could have this happy future together was if Dee Dee was no longer in the picture. And Gypsy had indicated to him that she had run away before, but her mother always found her. And I believe she convinced Nicholas that if they did run away together, her mother would always find them, and it would always end.
Nicholas has only provided part of the story. Up next, we hear from Gypsy 2.
Had you discussed alternative methods of killing your mother?
Yes.
What other alternatives had you considered?
Poison, arson, a gun.
You know what I mean? I think that's an interesting question of who was manipulating who into doing it. I really do. I'm very interested for the comment section because I would love to hear other people's points of views on this. And maybe mine will change based on hearing people explain a different point of view. But that is kind of my take right now. I feel that Gypsy knew that her mother was going to do this to her for the rest of her life. She knew she had to get rid of her mother in some capacity. She said that to her boyfriend, and he took it as killing her. Was that the correct thing to do? No, not at all. At all. Did Gypsy probably feel that she was going to die at the hands of her mother? Maybe. Did the boyfriend feel that he couldn't be in a relationship with Gypsy if the mother was still there? Yeah, and he acted on that. It's so complex, and I just think it's so important to note in all of this, what happened to Dee Dee is obviously incredibly terrifying and you know, upsetting. For years upon years, Gypsy's entire life up until this point, she was actively being poisoned by her mother. I just think that's always so important to always focus on.
I truly do worship her to the point that I won't do her.
Okay. Why didn't you prove that?
In 2015...
No, well, I think you proved that.
...that he murdered Dee Dee Blanchard, the mother of his girlfriend Gypsy Blanchard. He claims Gypsy urged him to do it so that they could be together and she could be free from the woman who had been abusing and keeping her hostage for years. Ultimately, the duo...
You know what I mean? From either of them, there's no rationality behind it. There's no rationality from either of them.
...in charge for Dee Dee Blanchard's murder. But who's more responsible? At Nicholas's trial, Gypsy would take the stand and testify for the defense.
Just her telling her story on the stand for that defendant garnered sympathy for them both. And it also tended to show that the defendant also had emotional and mental issues.
She explained that not only did she help Nicholas, she was the one who pushed him to do it.
Who talked you into killing your mother?
I did. I talked him into it.
Why not just tell somebody rather than kill your mother?
I truly didn't believe that nobody would believe me if I told anyone. My mother had legal documents in place saying that I was incompetent, and I thought that...
For Gypsy, obviously, I think that the purpose of this was maybe it was the key, or her perceived key to the freedom that she had so longed to have. And, you know, she didn't have the ability to create what we view as kind of normalized relationships with anybody.
And what was your mom doing that caused you to be more desperate?
Things were getting physically and more physically abusive. The hitting was more. The starving was more.
And when it came to those alarming Facebook posts from Dee Dee's account after the killing, guess who wrote them?
Who made that post?
I did.
Did you make that post pretending to be somebody else?
Yes.
And who were you pretending to be?
Nick. I wanted her to be found. I wanted the cops to find her body.
Yet, it was Nicholas who actually killed Dee Dee.
Why didn't you kill your mother?
I didn't believe I could do it.
Could you explain what you mean by that?
I don't like blood. I don't like the sight of blood. Frankly, I'm too squeamish.
Gypsy wasn't even in the room.
When you were stabbing Dee in the bed, where was Gypsy at?
She was hiding in the bathroom.
During cross-examination, the state chipped away at this idea that Gypsy was the mastermind.
You mentioned that how the murder was to take place, that was all up to the defendant, correct?
That is correct.
And it was the defendant that told you he wanted to stab your mom.
Correct.
And it was the defendant that told you he wanted a knife.
Yes.
You never told him to stab her 17 separate times, right?
No.
He wanted you to help clean up blood, right?
Yes, sir.
And he wanted you to clean naked.
Yes, sir.
Because that kind of turned him on.
Yes, sir.
He's pretty much hypersexual. He's got this one person who is engaging in sexual acts and sexual behaviors and sexual conversations with him that he's interpreting as love. And again, having autism spectrum disorder means that he doesn't really understand reciprocity.
When it comes to Nicholas Godejohn, he has quite the history. He was arrested in 2013 for allegedly masturbating in a McDonald's and carrying a knife. His apparent sexual proclivities may have played a role here as well. After the killing, he and Gypsy then have sex. Nicholas assures it was consensual.
Obviously, I was the one that was in charge, but she went along with it willingly.
Okay.
Gypsy, however, said she only agreed as a way to keep Nicholas from doing something truly disturbing.
When he asked you about raping your mother, you actually talked him out of it, right?
Yes.
And you did so by offering the alternative that he would be able to rape you after the murder, correct?
That's correct.
I wouldn't be surprised if the sexual act was actually consensual on both ends. Again,
Okay. So, you know what I mean? I feel that one thing that is very apparent from Gypsy Rose's trial is the willingness to answer anything and everything. And I think that as you find out more and more, there's a clear picture that the problem here was the boyfriend. And he saw that there was a problem in the woman that he loved's life. And he wanted to solve it. But he enjoyed, solving it. And Gypsy got persuaded. Even though she was the one, I know, even though she was the one with the original idea and stuff, but it's like, we have Gypsy also saying that she would never have been able to do it herself, like, whatever. So it's like this weird, I always keep having, like, I can't not keep stressing just how many times in the trial and stuff, Gypsy stated that, like, she felt that there was nothing else that could have happened because, like we heard her say, her mother had forged legal documents, had forged all these different documents that if Gypsy came forward saying that, her mother was lying, well, actually legal and all this sides with Dee Dee. So then, fuck you, Gypsy Rose. You have to live like this for the rest of your life for as long as that may be when you're continuing to be poisoned by your mother. Like, it's intense.
Nicholas believing that he has earned some kind of reward and Gypsy just giving in.
It's clear this couple killed Dee Dee Blanchard, but what should happen to them is not so simple.
He needs treatment, and he's not going to receive that behind bars for the remainder of his life.
Stay with us.
Oh, we're staying with you. Don't worry. Prime Crime.
What did you say was on your dead to me? What did you said?
Who said?
That part of me said.
Okay.
My evil side of me said.
Okay.
This is Nicholas Godejohn, an autistic young man who confessed to Missouri police that he and his girlfriend Gypsy Blanchard killed her mom, Dee Dee. This was a way to free Gypsy from her mom, who physically abused her, namely by exaggerating her daughter's health ailments, including going so far as to shave her head and force her to be wheelchair-bound. When Gypsy and Nicholas are arrested and charged for murder, it becomes a question if they really understood their actions and should go to prison. At one point during his police interview, Nicholas says that he and Gypsy have alter egos.
The thing is, the good side of me, originally refused to do it.
Okay.
And that's the reason why it was instant that it happened right away.
Okay.
Because my evil side was actually did it.
Okay.
There's more than one of the sides of each other that is in love with each other. So I got one side of her, his name is Kitty. There's like a little girl inside of her.
Multiple personality disorders or dissociative identity disorder. I don't believe either one of them have that. They needed to keep themselves safe. They needed to put on a mask. They needed to put on some kind of front. So Gypsy needed to pretend herself to be this invalid, disabled individual in front of Dee Dee. And she also needed to accommodate Nicholas's more hypersexual kinds of urges. Nicholas, who has a problem with social interactions, doesn't understand masks. So for him, someone doing something bad or him doing something bad is simply a bad side.
Despite Nicholas's low IQ and autism, The jury didn't believe that he couldn't appreciate what he did and eventually convicted him of first-degree murder. Nicholas was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
I think that he absolutely knew what he was doing. There's a difference between not knowing what you're doing and making a poor decision. But I really feel that he doesn't deserve to spend the rest of his life in jail. He needs treatment, and he's not going to receive that behind bars for the remainder of his life.
There was great planning that went into this idea that he traveled a great distance in order to pull this thing off. You can sell this idea that he is kind of this innocent babe in the woods, that he didn't have control over what he was actually engaging in. I'm not buying it.
As for Gypsy, she pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 10 years in prison.
So one would ask, why would she plead guilty? So a couple of reasons. One, the evidence was very much stacked against her, not to mention to kind of get this over. This trial was likely to be an intense circus and would have brought out a lot of information that probably Gypsy would not have wanted to come out during the trial.
Even though she's locked away, surprisingly, Gypsy appears to be in a much better place than when her mother was alive.
Dee Dee is no longer influential in Gypsy's life. She's not creating medical problems for Gypsy.
And another reason for her to be happy? She's up for parole in 2024.
I think it's quite likely that she would be paroled in 2024 because she is such a sympathetic figure. This woman suffered this abuse, all the medications, feeding tubes, all these things went on, wheelchair bound when she didn't need to be. You have to wonder, how is she going to support herself? Who is going to take care of her? She very much will still need care from an individual, from another adult, based on everything that's occurred.
Nicholas?
Sorry, oh my god, I'm so silent because it's just so intense, but I think that that's such an interesting point. You know, like, I agree. I don't think that, I mean, obviously you can tell that I'm very much so team Gypsy Rose here. I don't think that she should have gotten lifetime and, 10 years, okay? Well, apparently she's doing 8. That's if she gets out this time next month. There's a question to be asked of, like, how has she been doing over the last 10 years? Like, sure, sending someone to prison is one thing, right? But what support has she got over the last 10 years? Or, how have they, you know what I mean? Like, has she just been in a prison routine for 10 years and then they're going to send her out in the world and good luck? Like, what happens there? That's something that I'm very curious of. And I know she's done a lot of interviews and I could possibly dive into them and hear about how she's doing now and stuff. But it's like, it seems like such an extreme jump and a dangerous jump as well. That's from living your entire life a lie and being so suppressed and stuff to being out in the world of freedom, specifically after coming 10 years from jail as well. And, you don't have the fear of your mother coming. It's like, how does someone even respond to that? I don't fucking know.
Killed Dee Dee Blanchard. But what's complicated is who was controlling who in this murder.
Who was in the driver's seat, I think will be a question I don't know that will ever necessarily be answered. However, I think that, going back to this analogy, making a deal with the devil, I'll do this for you, but in the end, I'll control you. I'll debase you to the point where you will strip down nude. You will clean up the blood from the floor.
He's falling into a relationship with her that he doesn't have the capacity to understand. They're both influencing one another. But ultimately, it is Gypsy who does the extreme behavior of engaging in conversations that would lead Nicholas to committing this murder as a way of setting them both free.
The Gypsy and Dee Dee Blanchard story is really something hard to believe, even spawning its own television show. Yet the most tragic part of all of this is that people still wonder who really was the victim. Dee Dee? Nicholas? Gypsy? Maybe all of them. That's all we have for you here on Prime.
Okay, here's my closing take on this. Dee Dee, the mother, very clearly dealt with things that led her to feel that she had to have control over people. And Dee Dee was very dangerous. And Dee Dee was killing her daughter. And the lie couldn't have kept up forever. And like I said, it would have been Dee Dee goes to prison lifetime for fraud, or Gypsy dies because she's so sick. Gypsy has made it very clear, and I genuinely believe her, that she felt the only opportunity for her to continue existing was with her mother not in the picture. The boyfriend took that in a very extreme way, and Gypsy did endorse it too. I can't speak for the rationale behind Gypsy Rose, who spent her entire life confined, fed medication, feeding tubes, not allowed to walk, all these different things, lied to, I'm not going to speculate on the rationale behind someone and their decision making after that. I fear that people always forget what happened to Gypsy Rose. What happened to her mother is devastating and shouldn't have happened. It's also important to note that Gypsy would have probably have been killed by her mother, in my opinion, eventually. And I feel that the boyfriend and Gypsy thought this was the only thing to do. And it's devastating that that's how the story ended. I still don't believe that Gypsy would have deserved lifetime in prison, because when she was existing with her mother, she was basically in a prison already. I'm going to leave it there. Let me know if you would like to dive a little bit more into this. Like, my opinion's already developing the more and more I talk about this, and it's only been like 30 minutes. So if you want to do more, let me know, because I can definitely dive into it further. But please let me know your opinion down below and, like, describe it a little bit. I would love. Okay, see you very soon. Bye.